Great. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Ben Lewis. I'm with the Center for Geographic Analysis at Harvard, and I'm going to tell you about a project we've been working on really in earnest now just for about 6 months. This was funded by a grant from National Endowment for the Humanities, actually, which I think is pretty interesting. But we'll see if you think it's interesting. We'll learn a little more about this project first. So the problem that I see is that there are millions of geo-services out there literally a click away, but we don't know where they are, and we have no way to search them. So I would submit we're in the same situation now with Geospatial as we were in 1995 with web pages. That might sound a little crass, or I don't know, but that's how I feel about the importance of geospatial services and their inability to be found. So we propose to build a platform to harvest from services and maintain access to that is, monitor them, build a global public registry of everything we can find. And we knew that given the very metadata light environment, we'd need to be leveraging that stuff in every way possible. So we designed a new sort of user interface to kind of exploit the spatial and temporal dimensions as much as possible. This is for humanists, so time was really important. But time is actually important for everybody. You're going to see an app that's really oriented in a way towards humanists, but obviously this can be used with anything, and there's a lot of non-humanistic data in the system. So the mapping portion of this, where we return a distribution of all overlapping bounding boxes instantly, we've only got about 70,000 layers in the system now, but it will scale to millions. In fact, it scales to billions. This is Lucene, good old Lucene. We are actually working on a project right now that involves building a Lucene registry of a billion geospatial tweets, which is going to be completed soon, as in a few months. This isn't some big long-term research project. So out of this service registry, there's going to be a public API. It's actually already public. It's just not, this is still very, very early alpha. And there are lots of rough edges, lots of things we're going to be working out in the next few months. And with that, I'm just going to show you. So we built this. Our argument to NEH was, we built this thing called Worldmap. I don't know if any of you have heard of it or used it. It's a big sandbox for scholars. The argument was, or I should say, it's really for people who have more than a few megs of data, how they can get that data up into the cloud easily. It's based on GeoNode. We forked it a while ago. We haven't had quite the bandwidth to get back connected to the mothership, but that's going to happen probably in the next 6 months. Everything we do here is going to end up, well, actually, everything you see today is really completely independent of Worldmap. It's not tied to GeoNode at all. It can stand independently, which is probably why there's been some interest among some other organizations in using this. So in old-fashioned Worldmap, this is what you see. This is the view. This is the composition page, which is very similar to current Worldmap. But it's here that things look a little different from current Worldmap. So we're now returning, how many do I have? 85,000 layers here, and that's on-the-fly heat map, fairly crude, but this can be tweaked. It will get better, of the distribution of those layers. And we can mouse over the heat map and get back immediate feedback on what those numbers mean, because this is a relative surface, right? This is not an absolute thing. This is relative, and it's going to always be this color scheme as we zoom around. We can go do keyword search. We can search by source, and source in this case is really, at this point, the URL, the domain of the remote service. We've got about 20,000 out of these 85,000 local layers, that is local to Worldmap, and for those we expose the username instead of the service. So somebody can search by username, find everything that somebody from uses Worldmap has in there. We can search by a few different service types. This will get refined, and obviously service types don't mean a lot to a lot of people, but to geeky people they mean something. And so this is really in the middle ground. It's probably not going to remain that way. And we have a time bar. We go back to the beginning of the Earth because I really didn't want to try to figure out how far to go back. And we go about 300 years out into the future because it looks like most people don't think the planet's going to be around a lot longer than that, though I totally disagree with that. But a lot of projections out there that go out a couple hundred years, and so I want to be sure we can capture all that. And we'll play with that. I mean, who knows how far we can go out. We bring back a list of, this is where Lucene really becomes valuable because it lets you mix lots of apples and oranges to come up with a ranking and to be as smart as you can about how you return results. So this is the top 10 of 85,000 layers. But the other thing we do here is we do instant previews of everything because we cache everything. So every remote service we cache on the fly as used, but we pre-cache everything, at least that initial top-level view, so that we can let people search by, very quickly get a sense of whether a data set is useful or not. Now, we do have a bit of a bug. Just crept in. So 2 days ago, we were at 40,000 layers. Today, we're at 85,000 layers because we really just started harvesting in earnest. And so there's a little bug. A bunch of WMS layers are not showing the preview. We're using map proxy in the background. So this will be fixed in a couple days, but right now, it isn't great for demoing. But we still are getting, quite a bit of stuff. But that's the basic paradigm is that. So then you click on a layer, and it loads it to the cart, and then you throw it into, this is old-fashioned old Worldmap, and now you have a composition environment, and you can save it. You could upload your own stuff, overlay it with these maps. You can publish this as an embed, and all that good stuff that we're used to once you get stuff on the web. But now you can do it. Now you can quickly find and bind to any remote service layer and start using that stuff as well. That's the main argument here. But the other main important point here is that this is a plugin, right? This is a plugin that hits our API. It doesn't have to run in Worldmap. It could run in QGIS. It could run in ArcGIS. It could run in any web mapping application that needs a way to find and bind to everything that is known. And so that's the basic vision. So here, let's do a keyword search. Demographics. All right, so there's a footprint of demographics. And notice that we're bringing back a lot of stuff that doesn't say demographics, right? So we've got a couple of thesauri and dictionaries, and that's the beauty of Lucene. So we're bringing back all kinds of stuff related to demographics, right? Which is what you want to do with any keyword search. We can, by the way, this works in any language. With the wonders of Lucene, we could expose all kinds of fancy query structures here. We could have stars, do star wildcard queries, these letters, star this letter. You can get very fancy with search. Right now, we've just exposed sort of the very basics. Let's zoom in here. Okay, we went from 85,000 layers down to something with demographics, and now we've zoomed into the US, and this is the footprint of demographics data for the US. So we have 1,700 layers still that seem to have something to do with demographics and seem to have something to do with the US. Now let's filter by time. So let's say 1,600 to let's say 1,600 to 1,900. All right, and we've now got 41 layers. Let's mouse over a couple of them. So here we've got some This is 1830 U.S. Census urban population. That's pretty relevant. Okay, let's do a quick source search. So I'm going to search NYPL. So New York Public Library's got a lot of great data, a lot of great humanities data, dated. We can zoom in, and part of our ranking involves figuring out what is going to display well for a given scale. So it's not a coincidence this stuff displays properly. And with that, of course, we can sort by date. We just sorted 3,000 layers by date. We can sort by source, and we can do a number of other things. We could only look at Worldmap layers. We could only look at WMSs and so on. With that, I think I'm just going to open it up to questions because I think you get the picture. Yes?
Are you guys serving just thematic layers, or are you planning to layers in there, imagery in there?
So this is all WMSs and Esri REST at the moment. Yes, so the question was, are we going to be bringing raster imagery into the system? And my argument, and my response is that we're not distinguishing between them at the moment because we're really just grabbing web map services, which can have either one behind them. Esri divides into Esri REST map and Esri REST image, which I believe Esri REST image generally has, but they're basically all versions of WMS. Does that answer your question? Yeah. But it would be nice. So for Worldmap layers, for the local stuff, we can separate raster and vector. We know. And there might be ways. No, in general, there's not. It's not described in the protocols, as far as I know. So, yes?
I assume you're searching just on the metadata for the services. You're not digging down into attributes of each service.
That's a great question. So for local layers, for Worldmap layers, we're actually going to be doing feature-level search. So that's actually coming on this grant. We're in the process of building it. You're going to actually be able to search at the feature level for finding layers. You're also going to be able to visualize 20 million. There's 20 million features in Worldmap at the moment. So your heat map is going to be built on those 20 million features. When you get to a feature you like, you'll be able to find out what layer it's in. That's coming in the next couple months. But for remote layers, yeah, you can't do feature search. Once we're doing feature services, WFS, Esri feature services, then some interesting things become possible. Pulling the schemas from those, maybe even pulling some features. Not sure yet. Yes?
Where are you harvesting these from?
So we wrote a Hadoop routine and crawled the common crawl initially for these signatures, all the major signatures for get capabilities and REST. We found about 30,000, and we're just in the early stages of going through those and harvesting them. We've got a pretty robust harvester now. It uses celery and farms the tasks out nicely, and it's becoming quite robust. But we're going to have an easy way for anybody to submit a URL. If they don't see their stuff in there and they want it in there, they just tell us about it, and it's in there for good, pretty much. And then we monitor everything, and we'll have uptime statistics on everything, and that'll be part of ranking. So we're not going to shouldn't have a big problem with dead links, which has been a problem with some efforts like this before. Yes? What's the precision of the geospatial index? That's a really good question. That's a great question. I might have to ask my Lucene guy. It's very tunable, and but I don't know what the resolution is on this. I could easily find out and tell you.
Are you searching against the bounding boxes or the actual?
Bounding boxes. Yeah, because they're remote services, so we don't know. For local layers, we could search on the actual, extents that the features make up. Yes.
Just the, like, I don't know, but like the density of data products, or are there other attributes like the heat map, or is it just like there are this many things with those bounding boxes?
Oh, I didn't show you something very important. Okay, so let's see. Let's load. Let's just pick something here. All right, let's pick something. I'm loading a couple layers to the map here, and I'm going to, now in Worldmap, you can right-click on anything and get to the data behind the layer. This used to be in GeoNode, but now for remote layers. So this is now coming out of Hypermap. This is our layer orchestration platform. So this is all the stuff that we're storing about everything, and we're making this available. So the layer page, the endpoint, the service endpoint, the solar endpoint. So if I click on that, we're going to get solar, but we'll get JSON back. And very important for this kind of thing, wherever possible. And a lot of servers do this now. They have a landing page for a layer. So in this case, we get the user to the actual source page, the page about the layer on the remote system, so they could go ahead and download it right from here and do whatever the original provider wants to let them do. And so we don't get into that business of being a broker for downloads and all that messy stuff. We just want the metadata and do as much as we can with that.
Sorry, you already covered this, but are you sort of intending to operate this service in the long term, or is it more about developing the software and then someone else will operate it, or like
That's a great question. So I'm often asked, so is Harvard going to maintain Worldmap forever? And I'm not really in a position to answer that, but I kind of say flippant things like, well, Harvard's been around since 16-something, which may and may not give the right impression, but I do know that this is not. I mean, Worldmap was already getting a little expensive. We host on Amazon, but we're also at this point not even really purchasing our cloud resources. We're not doing reserve or anything, so it's a bit expensive. But this is just, I would guess that if we harvested everything that we could find over a year or so, we'd be somewhere between 1 and 5 million layers. That's just a very, very rough guess. And maybe other people in this room have a better idea. That can run on one solar shard on one server, right? Now, depending on the traffic, it might have to be sharded a little bit, but that's a very small number for solar. In our billion GeoTweet platform that we're building with the same, it's going to have a fairly similar UI. It's not going to be quite, it'll be a little better. Hopefully quite a bit better, but that's going to require 3 or 4 servers to handle 1 billion features, not large ones. This is just running solar, which is not super resource intensive, takes a bit of RAM, but it's not very exotic. So one of the cool things I think about this whole approach is it's very much off-the-shelf software with very basic commodity hardware. Oh, and the other nice thing about this is, courtesy of Lucene, is that this can be federated. We could be searching. Let's say we had 1 million. Let's say we had 1 million layers in here. This search could be going out against 5 shards on 5 different organization servers. This doesn't all have to be centralized, and it would be just as fast. In fact, it would be faster, probably, because it would be in parallel, go out to the 5 servers, and then it would compose the results back for the user wouldn't know. But I think that federatability is also really exciting. And the fact that it's a very low barrier to entry to set up one of these and to make, it's important in this whole GeoWeb universe to keep the technology for serving representing the data close to where the data is owned and known, right? That's why that whole Z3950 thing, it was always federated, but it was incredibly slow and cumbersome. But the idea was, you know, keep it there, keep the metadata with the provider. But I think here we can keep the metadata and the services with the provider and still have it be really, really fast and useful. Does this seem useful? Or, okay. Okay, cool, cool. Okay.
So you can talk as long as you want as far as I'm concerned, but they might start breaking down the road.
Oh, okay. Oh, right, we're the last. Yeah. We're the last, okay. So, yes. Are usage licenses presented within services?
Within the search different services have different usage requirements. Can we search based on that?
That's something that I've always thought that we should be doing. We're not doing it yet, but so, for example, a service might be published and it might say, thou shalt not represent this in any viewer other than the viewer of this particular company or organization. Is there a standard so that we can, on a machine level, honor that? You don't know. Okay, does anybody know? So if there is a way to not insult people, we will do that.
You just need to turn on do not crawl.
Do not crawl, right. Yeah, if there's a do not crawl robot.txt, we don't crawl, right? And that would be stored in what part of the? Okay, at the service level, there's an access and usage rights for, that's for Esri REST, right? But not, I don't think for OGC. Does anybody know? Okay, yeah, so, all right, so then we'll use that, yeah. Let's see what else.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you're caching that initial view for that?
Yeah, so we're using something called map proxy. And we just, when we harvest, as part of the harvesting process, we capture a preview. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Does that answer your question? Or how are we getting to that preview? So we're caching everything, which means that pretty much everything that will be coming here is via the proxy cache. And this is also going to be via the proxy cache. So once we hit a service once, we don't have to keep hitting it again. Now, this does raise a big and interesting question. How do we know when the data is changed behind a cache? And that's, to me, that's just a really interesting research question, and it's a really interesting standards question. If we're capturing date and we can see that the date changed, then that's an obvious way to do it, right? But really, there should be something built into the protocols that allow this. And as far as I know, there isn't. Now, is there an Esri REST?
There is for newer servers that are hosted in ArcGIS Online. They'll have a last edit date, and then for on-premise servers, they sometimes have editor tracking turned on.
Okay.
You can get that, but the only way that we know is we have to scrape the whole service every day.
You being Esri, or you being
ArcGIS Open Data.
ArcGIS Open Data? Oh,
So we scrape the entire service and just throw it through a hash function.
okay, right.
That's how we know if it changes.
Right. But you've got a date that you're using. Oh, you don't use the date. Why not use the date?
Use the date when it's available.
Okay, but it's not usually there. Right.
A third of services.
Right. That's the thing. That's the thing about date. Most people don't bother with them, but they're becoming critical. This is depict date, a whole different kind of date, which is very important for us, and I think it's important for everybody, really. It's often not there. So we have a date miner. Oh, I forgot to mention that. If you mouse over something, you see it says, gives the title, the source, the abstract, and it says date from metadata. So that means we got the date, the depict date from the metadata. Now notice it's, yeah, which explains why we don't see it in the title or abstract. In other cases, you'll see it says date : detected. And that's where we recognize the date in the unstructured text of the title or abstract. And we just have a very simple date miner at the moment. We're not using, NLP or anything, though that would probably be a good idea at some point. But right now, we're just kind of still figuring out so many things at the same time. But it's working, and a lot of dates in the system. I think out of our 80,000, we probably have 30,000 which have dates, and probably half of those were detected, and maybe 80% of our detected dates are really good dates, and we've still got quite a bit of error in our detected dates, which will hopefully get better. I think it's going to. Oh, another important part of this is going to be crowd curation. So in Worldmap, that's pretty straightforward, because if somebody finds a map and they load it to their map and they save this map, that's really a vote, right? That's kind of the very, very early beginnings of something like PageRank for maps. Is here, I've found this remote service, I've loaded it to my curated little thing that I'm doing, my map, my view, and I've saved it. Now that means I want to come back to it. It's like a bookmark. It's now, when you think about this being a plug-in to other applications, it would be really nice to figure out a good way for remote users of the API to also be able to capture those usage statistics as well. And another thing we'll be implementing eventually, when we get funding, I guess, will be ability for people to correct stuff. So no matter what we do, we're going to have bad dates, especially if we're detecting them. But also, even when people put them in, often the date will be the date that the data was uploaded and not the date that the data depicts. So it's very tricky. So you have to have a way for humans to say, oh, that's not right. This is the real date. And then to keep track of which dates are the ones that we thought were correct, that we thought the metadata was correct, which ones did we detect, and then which ones did humans say, no, this is the right one. And I think if you sort of keep track of all that stuff, it could start to become, a real beginning of an ecosystem, a usable search tool. I think already just this, if this had more content in it, is useful. It's a heck of a lot more than nothing, But I think if people find a lot of error in it and they can't correct it, they just might say, hey, to heck with this. So I think it's going to be very important for people to be able to correct it. Everything's on GitHub. It's Hypermap. If you want URLs, I can give them to you. I'm just forcing myself to get back into tweeting, but I'm just kind of starting again. But I think so. B Green Lewis is my Twitter handle. BGREENE Lewis, LEWIS. So yeah, I'll be tweeting as stuff starts happening with this, and we also have a Twitter account out of our center. The Harvard Center for Geographic Analysis has a Twitter account that we pretty much run all announcements through. And I think my My email address is here on the front page of the app. If anybody wants to write me, feel free. That's me. Yeah, and so seems like at least one government agency, maybe two, have started making use of this, because I guess even given the various platforms around this filled a niche on the open source side of things, that that wasn't being filled, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I'm really excited about just getting more content in here and figuring out how best to clean it up